Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first edition of Be Rare Thought Leader Circle Roundtable session. Just as a context and as a prelude, 3AI has 1,128 thought leaders. This is after almost 5 years from 17,244 nominations. So if you take an aggregation, it's about a strike rate or approval rate of almost 7%. Why is that? Why is that we've been so specific about creating a breed of thought leaders with that kind of a strike rate? Of course, it's never something which is in our minds about the strike rate, but who are these 1,100 plus thought leaders? What makes them or qualify them to be a thought leader? Is it about their industry? Is it about their experience? Is it about their pedigrees? Is it about their credentials? And more importantly, once they're part of the thought leader circle, what exactly are they doing or engaging in with to be seen and being witnessed as a thought leader? More importantly, today, if we look in the larger continuum of things, thought leadership per se in the technology era is paramount. Hyper competition, personalization, a clamor for being seen, differentiation in terms of capabilities, solutions, product, platforms. And there is not a day which goes by where a new tool, a new application, or a new platform is not announced, which also means there has to be an effort at the back end to also market, to promote, to evangelize these things. And also, we're talking about a technology which is so fungible, so supple. Many of the concepts which we are even talking today as a part of this session may not be relevant even, let's say, a month from now. Such is the kind of, let's say, velocity we are talking about when it comes to the change what we are witnessing. We call it a Barney factor, what it used to be a VUCA for the uninitiated. Barney factor is all about brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. So that's the kind of a world we're living in. Now think of this to add to the challenge. Gen AI comes in, starts tickling the egos of each one of us because now intelligence at scale gets democratized and everyone starts getting questioned. And what we say, even our kids or spouses are saying, challenge the status quo. Now, what we have in the next 30 minutes is something very interesting and never been debated. And before I set up the context for the roundtable again, the panel, what we have, is very eclectic. Marky and I would also say represent a very multifaceted set of industry representations across digital natives, Indian enterprises, GCCs, startups, BPM tech firms, and all. What is more important today is that they're all qualified thought leaders, not just because of the 3I, but because of the credentials and the body of the professional work they bring to the table. And which is what my attempt in the next 30 minutes would be to really unpeel their, I would say, DNA of understanding about thought leadership. And just to supplement, I also have a person who apparently is my co founder participating and is always behind the camera, but we coaxed and nudged him to be part of this conversation, who's actually seen this movie multiple times. 17,000 nominations get rejected and a lot of trolling happens. So he's the one who's really looking at why the leaders are getting rejected. Uh, Kapil, Premil, Abhishek, Sayani, Srivatsa, Itti are the part of, I would say, panel discussion. So let me open up, and this is again open for all. Anyone can chime in and put their perspective. Why? And this is a very germane question I want to pose. Why does one need thought leadership today?
Samir, I'll maybe go first. Thank you, first of all, for having this session. I think it's really important for us to have this conversation. And having been to a lot of your thought leadership 30 meetings, and this subset that we have here is quite representative of the people that we have in those meetings, right? And I think maybe I should talk a little bit about what happens in the TLC meeting so that that becomes a point of view for folks here as well as we talk about this. I don't think the thought leadership that people usually imagine is all about handshakes and agreeing to things. And I think in the era that we are in, it's very important that we disagree with one another if we don't see a point of view. And that, I think, challenges each of us to innovate and do more research and understand each other's perspective better. From the perspective of how the TLC is structured, and I've been to a lot of forums, I think when we talk about thought leadership, there are two types, right? One is the curiosity piece, which is basically the imagination of what can be done in the future. Then there's another thought leadership, which is basically actionable thought leadership, which is basically what can I do to help my team navigate the challenge of today. And that's where the perspective that we're seeing emerge in the market. A lot of this was skewed towards the former when we talked about thought leadership maybe about 5, 6 years ago. And now, given the rapid change and, like you said, the changing velocity of technology, I think leadership by itself is grappling with the changes in terms of how they are a how they can help their team succeed faster with really actionable insights. That's the way I'm seeing this evolve.
Great. That's a good start. Any other viewpoints, please?
Sure. I could probably go next. So I think we're all living in an information era. Everything that we see, everything that we hear, we always want to go in and search for it, right? And we want to understand what's really going on in the world. So therefore, for each one of us, it becomes very important to create a perception and presentation, and have a network of people from whom we're constantly learning from, because there is information that is available on the web, and then there is information that's available through experience, right? So when you combine those, that's where you come to a point where you can really start creating a point of view which is deep enough for the rest of the group to understand. Otherwise, you will find a lot of generic content out there. You'll find a lot of people just putting things out for the sake of putting things out. With generative AI coming in fact, people have gotten to this bad habit of even writing things by just having generative AI generate content for them. That's not really thought leadership. Thought leadership is your own opinion, your own point of view, your own differentiation from a personality perspective, from a thought perspective, whether right or wrong doesn't matter, but what is your opinion about certain technologies, certain things that are happening in the world. And that really starts to differentiate you from the rest of the group, and that's where the perception and presentation come together, so that tomorrow if somebody meets you and searches for you, the first thing that they're going to look at is, does this person even have a point of view about things or not? So not just about knowledge sharing and knowledge gaining. I think it's also a lot about creating your own name in the world out there. It's also about people having to really understand and appreciate what you bring to the table, so it's not just superficial, but it's also deep. So thought leadership is that medium through which you will be able to really start to, what as I would say, I mean, really start to create your own space in this entire space of too much information, and therefore create your own network from that point on. I mean, the benefits are too many. I'll talk about it later, but yeah,
Sure.
that would be my
Sure.
initial thought.
Create your own space is something what you want to emphasize. Great.
I think just adding to creating your own space, one of the things that I look at, whenever I think about thought leadership and why do we really need thought leadership, and uh, when we go in for one of these thought leader circle meeting, I think what happens is when you're doing something on your own, right, or when you're part of an organization, you have a perspective about doing something, right? So let's say I am from retail, so I will have a perspective about doing something, right? When we come to these discussions, we recognize that there are different ways of doing things, and sometimes something that is happening maybe in healthcare might trigger a thought that, hey, maybe this is something that we can apply to the ways that we work, right? Or this is a technology that is worth exploring. Could I have done that by just searching and blogging? That's difficult because you
Right.
really have to go through a lot of content out there. Secondary, like Abhishek said, there is just so much of content and content that is being generated that sometimes you just want to hear an actual person say, oh, you know what, this is why this failed, or this is why this succeeded. And it makes for a very interesting discussion. And one of the best things is that sometimes it even challenges your own thoughts and your own processes. And you start thinking, maybe there is a better way of doing things, right? And I love that some of our discussions are provocative. I know that sometimes when we discuss, we are doing the service providers versus, people who are in GCCs, or people who are creating things as solutions. I love that because you can see that, we're literally thinking about, yeah, that might not work, or you cannot, that might not be the best possible solution out there. So just the whole idea of sitting in a group, collaborating with your peers, it in a very, I would say, in a very open atmosphere, because here we are sitting and having breakfast, or maybe a sidebar at a conference. It just opens up a lot more perspectives for all of us.
So just taking that one rendition, Abhishek, Itti, what you said, and also dovetailing with what Premil said. Let me also go a bit deeper around leaders getting associated in terms of building their thought leadership. And when I say leaders, I'm agnostic in terms of industry segments, whether it's Indian enterprise, global GCCs, or even provider segment. Is it often a misconstrued concept that you speak in conferences, you are part of the events, you're writing something arbed, you're applying for awards and getting it, and by the end of the month, you're seen 10 times and you're a thought leader? Let me just pause at that. Is it something what you guys see it happening, which makes some leaders qualify them as thought leaders? And I'm sure everyone is giving a wry smile, so they have something to uh, give an output.
Can start
Samir,
that probably. Sorry, go ahead, Sayani.
yeah. Samir, I think it's a mixed bag, So visibility is also pretty important for every leader, whether they are establishing themselves as a thought leader or not. But I think the most important aspect of a thought leader is in terms of what kind of changes are they bringing, let's say, to their organization, to their role, to the culture of the organization, to technology. See, we have been in data science and AI and technology. We have been working for decades in this field. And throughout our entire careers, we have brought in transformations in different ways in the organizations that we have worked with, right? And I think that is what makes a person gain perspective. Sessions and articles, blog posts, when they are representative of that experience, of that original thought, of their very unique perspective, when that is supplemented, that supplements the work, that the body of work they're doing, I think that is what makes a thought leader, not just the publications or the presentations and the awards per se, but and that's very very important, and an organization like 3AI, like what you were talking about, the approval rates, selecting 1,200 odd people across 17,000 people, I think there's a lot of background work also which goes behind the scenes, right? In terms of figuring out who those thought leaders are, what they have brought into to the table. And I think that's what it has to complement. It just can't be, somebody who has done a lot of work, but also not having the right kind of exposure. So it's about doing, like, or rather balancing both the aspects. One is around exposure, and one is about defining the fundamental in terms of what they have built so far.
So, what you're outlining, and that's a great thing what you said, and which is what you're also articulating, that keep visibility aside from thought leadership. Is that true?
That is yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay,
I
great.
think yeah,
Yeah.
I think I would agree with that. So, uh, I think so. Abhishek spoke about Gen AI, right? And when it came in, I work for an Indian enterprise, but there are lots of stakeholders within the organization. Some are outside, regulators. There are ministries who are keen to understand how this will impact customers, how this will impact the core business. And I think one of the things that when you're seen as a thought leader, you should be doing is building confidence across all the stakeholders, right? So, be it your board, for instance, the board wants to understand, what is generative AI, what is AI, how are organizations using it, what are the risks. Uh, Likewise, with the regulators, they are sort of keen to build policy around it. And one thing as an industry participant that a thought leader should do, apart from the networking, the awards, and I think Itti made a great point about understanding what others are doing, because that sort of speeds up your learning curve. You don't have to make the same mistakes that other did. You can sort of start a little ahead of the game.
So,
But
if I may, Srivatsa, and that's
yeah,
a great point what you said, that evangelization with the stakeholders, this whole advocacy amongst the pertinent ecosystem is important to be a thought leader. My observation, and Kapil, I want to come to that and then open up for others. This is my observation. Many a times, and I'm not being generic, but rather holistic, many a times we have seen leaders are carrying those tags, those organizational viewpoints, which at many instances have no meaning. It's just because you're working and you're being represented by that organization, even though that forum is not meant for you, but because you're carrying a tag, you're invited over there as a leader or a thought leader, and the viewpoints completely gets mirrored, or I would say in conjunction what your organization want you to say. Is that what thought leadership is all about? One. Second, we do change organizations, kind of a thing. Then, as a construct of the DNA of a leader, how does this thought leadership comes in automatically agnostic of the organization? And Shani clearly mentioned, look, keep the visibility aside. We will be getting so many invites, we'll participate in some of them, just to keep that LinkedIn warm, that look, as an individual or leader, we do exist. But what's next? I want to take views, couple from you, and then open up with others, please.
See, I'll mention two things. One is I'll keep that hat basis my previous experience working with three GCCs, Ericsson, Syngenta, as well as Nike. And one of the things which has been a consistent thing across these GCCs has been best practice sharing, whether it's an inside out view or it's an outside in view. They have been looking into how, whether it's a new technology which comes in, there's something in terms of disruption which comes in, what are the thoughts of their leaders in terms of what do they think. So the first place where they go and they look forward is what are our leaders thinking of this new technology or disruption, and then what it means for us, right? So that's first part. Second part is then they look for other similar GCCs or some similar organizations who have been into that business and what are their thoughts. So as I hear from my fellow panel members, one of the things which is absolutely true is that best practice sharing, which comes across different forums, which comes across and when it comes from the leader, it creates a very big impact. When we talk about the thought leader circle, we talk about thought leaders, we talk about influencers, we talk about practitioners, right? That's where it's extremely important, where an influencer talks about certain aspects, whether it's a generative AI or cloud or other things, it creates a huge impact on the audience, and it's a different thing altogether. Second thing which I want to cover is before 3i, I have been invited to various conferences at a college level or at a conference level. And one of the things where I also got surprised is it's an IoT conference. I have been invited. or there is a certain other conference where I have been invited, and one of the thoughts which comes to my mind is, in a panel where I'm sitting in, is it the right set of theme or context when I have been invited to that conference? So that's where, coming back to the point, it's extremely important that whenever we talk about thought leadership, there are different aspects which come around it. One is the best practice sharing which comes around it. Second is whether it is relevant for that particular organization or that particular stream. Those are things which need to be taken into consideration. Apart from experience, apart from branding, visibility, those are certain other things which I can absolutely talk about. So just a
Sure.
few cents on some of the things which have been discussed till now.
Sure. Let me ask you and I'll come to Premil after this on the same. So what you're saying is more of contextualization. For the sum total of the rejections, what happened in terms of thought leaders not going through, and I'm sure some of them have often tried to bribe you also for whatever means, I got no. In your view, because you've been looking at that thing for quite up closely, why do they get rejected? Why do they get declined? I'm sure this is not about their credentials or their organizations or pedigrees or education. What, in your mind, I mean, some observation you've seen, why they are not making the cut to the TLC?
See, one, of course, which I say is an hallucination, is the designation. There
So
have been,
designation is a hallucination for them, right? So they
yes,
often
exactly.
get this thing enamored that since we are carrying a higher tag, so we ought to be entitled for a thought leader, right?
Exactly. That
Okay.
is one of the things, simply that their understanding is that they are the, I'm just taking example, they are the head of analytics for an organization, and with that, they qualify directly to being a thought leader. That
Okay.
is not the case, and that has been there where people have been experienced in terms of a 15-year or say a 14-year or more than that, being carrying the designation of head of analytics, but they have been rejected. uh, that's one thing which comes in. Second thing which comes in, taking this to more at a next level, there have been people with the experience range of 20 plus years also who have been rejected solely because their experience. When we look for thought leaders, we look for AI, analytics, tech. We also look for the other side, MDs of organizations who are not carrying that technical analytics hat, but they have a team in place which they are looking into or overlooking into. So the second thing which comes in is uh, person can be 20 years experience, but not the experience is not relevant in terms of AI analytics tech. That's another reason why the person gets rejected. Uh, Third reason is because of when we when we are looking for a person coming into the thought leader circle, there is an conversation which I will have with the person to understand what is the reason for being part of the 3i thought leader circle. That is an extremely important input which we will share with the review council, apart from experience, credentials, other things. And basis that input, that's a very strong input which will go into the review council for a decision whether the person or the leader can be part of the review council. So that's an extremely important thing for them to decide on those. So certain things which
Sure.
I think
Sure.
have been part of decision making from the review council.
Sure. Premil, your views. I mean, and just want you to also add in the larger context, what makes a thought leader? I mean, is there a playbook? Is there a set of ingredients or concoction which goes into making a thought leader?
So I think Kapil mentioned it, right? I think everybody's got an opinion, right? And opinions don't make thought leaders, right? I think we all gather opinions through the things that we read and say and experience. But I think the making of a thought leader comes from three things, right? One is definitely experience and expertise. I think that's definitely the core.
Experience and expertise, right?
Experience, expertise. That's the core. I mean, I said, like, I learn a lot from this group and from your thought leadership circle and from your events and from others as well on the core of AI and the technology, because that's not my expertise, right? The second part of the thought leader is application in my mind. So basically, I come from a risk, regulatory, procurement, governance background. Listening and observing the information that you all have shared with me over a period of time has helped me, you know, help GCCs and corporations navigate the journey of how they set it up in India with emerging technologies like new age COEs, right? So when I go there and talk about, for example, this is how we want to set up a COE for you, there's a whole new nuance which AI brings into the table, right? So the second thing is basically applicability and all of that aspects around it. And third, I think is the most important part is basically recognition of expertise and where it lands, right? Because in this group, and it's a wonderful group because we have people from all different segments of, and possibly some, I don't know whether they did it by accident or whether it is by by design, but I think it's well covered, right, in terms of the engineering aspect, the GCC aspect, the product aspect, the services aspect. I think the a thought leadership by nature is also a test, like Itti was saying, right? Test a theory with individuals who are like-minded, but not necessarily going to agree with you on everything that you say. They will challenge you, which then gives you a point of view in terms of what you can talk in your boardroom and your steering committee meeting and say, you know what, we're going down a path that's not necessarily right. And that can come with a good level of examples and references from this group of people. So I think those three layers, I think, equally makes thought leadership.
Awesome. Itti, Abhishek, quick views from your side on this. What's the making of a thought leader?
I think everything that Premil said was on point. One thing that I would definitely add is at some point of time, also identify your niche, right? You could be a lot of things, right? You could have thoughts and you could have perspectives and you would have done a lot of things. But what is really your niche? What do you want to be known as, and as a thought leader in what? Right? Like Kapil said, maybe tomorrow some of us might recognize, hey, I'm really good at marketing analytics. And if there is ever a conversation around how do we apply AI to marketing and how do we make the best use of AI for marketing, then I definitely know what I'm talking about, or I definitely have a point of view. So I think identifying your niche is very important. And second, being open to like Premil said up front, right, curiosity and being open to learn, because that cannot stop. Like, it can never stop, even if it's 20 years like Kapil said, or even if it is 10 years, right, just cannot stop. You will, as a thought leader, you have to understand that your thoughts itself will be molded by these groups and by these conversations.
No, absolutely. In fact, one of the reason why some of the thought leaders, what we have in 3i, when I talk to the assessment council again, not naming some of these thought leaders who joined us, they were very clear, building on what Kapil said, that look, and I'll give some examples, like, look, we've spent enough time in analytics AI on the Indian enterprise generically, want to switch to GCC, can 3AI give us an opportunity? Or I've done enough work in marketing, customer side of AI. Now I want to really understand what risk, compliance, or operations AI is all about, and that's the platform I'm looking at. So they've not been shying away from saying, look, that whatever, for whatever reason, they have seen a particular area, facet, giving them a very good set of credentials for good 15, 20 years. They also realize that there is a shelf life. So they're keen to explore the other side of avenues as well. Abhishek, Srivatsa, Sayani,
Yeah,
your point
I
of
think
view,
I
please.
want to do add something,
Sure.
Samir. I think Itti made a very good point about curiosity. I think Premil was also mentioning. And just to take that a little further, I think it's very important for a thought leader to bring in versatility. in their ideas and perspectives as well. And that is where these networking events also help, because you're gaining perspective, but you're also able to identify your own thoughts and ideas into different other perspectives. So you are contributing as well to other industries. And I think that really what sort of makes a very well rounded thought leader, who's able to bring up that versatility of thought and ideas into various domains and sectors. So, and I think that definitely stems from the curiosity and the learning for sure. That's what I wanted to add.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think a couple of things I just want to add. One thing I think you covered when you said that people should have their own opinions. It should be separate from their organization. So to that extent, being authentic and sincere about what you believe in, I think is very important. Unless there is evidence to change your mind, you should not change your opinion, based on the audience you are with, right? To put it very bluntly, I think that is very important. The other thing, and I, wanted some thoughts if 3AI could sort of take this forward in some way, which is how do we contribute to building like the next generation of thought leaders, right? When people like, if there are structured avenues for us to mentor people who have slightly lower experience or at a stage where they're sort of ready to take up leadership roles or want to be a thought leader, uh, that's I think another thing that we should try and contribute to uh, if we want to be known as thought leaders.
Srivatsa, I want to just add to that. We also have a forum called Changemakers Circle, CMC, which is 5 to 15 years in terms of these individual contributors, SMEs, practitioners, when I count on a specific domain or a technology, data engineers, solution architects. 2, 3 dichotomies are happening. 350, 400 CMCs. They don't want to interact with the TLC. They're saying, look, do we gain anything if at all? Second, barring 12%, 88% of them are actually not sponsored, which means they are part of the CMC on their own, which is the willingness from their side to really say, look, have I arrived? Or what does it take me to be part of, let's say, the emerging leadership? And third thing which is happening, and we try doing these, and again, it's not that I'm conclusive in my viewpoints. There is a gap. There is a gap today between TLC and CMC that the twains shall not meet, which is what is happening today. Because it's not about technical versus business. I think somewhere uh, the gap is a bit generational. And I'm being very open out here, goes to the extent that we don't know what needs to be done. But of course, they are not thought leaders in all way. They are emerging leaders. But what we also see, and which is a reflection of, if some of you remember, we in GCCX Summit 2 months back, we got a kind of a girl, 14-year-old, who actually gave a sneak peek about Gen AI from Gen Z. I never knew that there is a Gen Z. I always knew there is a Gen Alpha. But irrespective, the thought process, what that particular population carry, is very different from CMC. And that CMC viewpoint is very different from TLC. So I believe there's a continuum which is happening today, that this gap, for some reason, seems to be very substantial and ever growing. And all the more reason, I think, at some level, for the TLC to be seen as role models, evangelists, influencers, practitioners, uh, and carrying those very, and you rightly said, authentic viewpoints, because you can't make it up for long. Second, you can't imbibe or inculcate someone's DNA and say, look, I should also be the one, because the personality never matches. And third is very important, this viewpoint that, are you taking efforts to do that? Which also makes me come to the point, which I want to take a rapid fire round, which is all about characteristics, the profiling, and give one particular attribute. And Abhishek, you like that word attribution, I've learned from you. What is one attribute of a thought leader that they should possess? Or rather, what's one attribute of a thought leader which you believe should stand out? And one word or one sentence, please, from each one of you.
Authentic. I mean, they just need to be authentic. piggybacking is not thought leadership. That's something that people get confused with.
Great.
They feel that they will take and they will move forward. So for me, just one thing can make you a thought leader is how authentic are you? Because if you're authentic, you're passionate. If you're passionate, you add value, and then you differentiate yourself. So everything will flow from authenticity.
Awesome.
I think a problem solver, my word would be a problem solver, like somebody who, when faced with very unique problems, can come up with unique and original solutions. So problem solver.
Great. Problem solver, authentic. What else?
I think the ability to influence when you are not in authority is something I would consider very important.
Okay. Great. Itti, Premil, Kapil.
I would
I
say
would take
open-minded.
Say that
Someone
again.
who's- I would say someone who's open-minded. Yeah, open-minded to learn, open-minded to absorb, various contrarian views, and open-minded to share.
Definitely curiosity. So I mean, the same thing that is started. I think it's a code for all of us.
Good. Kapil.
You would have observed when we talk about TLC application, sometimes it takes a second for that application to get accepted, and sometimes it takes 2 3 days, 4 days also. Reason is one word: genuine. Abhishek also mentioned that we look into how genuine that application is. So it's an extremely important guideline for the review council to look into.
Okay. So it goes back to the same point, being authentic. Of course, there are very few people like Abhishek where the authenticity comes on their faces. So, but that's I would say very very rare. Uh, Other facet, again, one word. What is one attribute they should not have if they need to be thought leader? And everyone goes on mute and we'll just switch on if we are responding, please. Maybe I'll call out name Srivatsa.
Uh, I think I would say selfishness in some form. It's you're not doing this just for yourself. You can't be very self-centered when you sort of want to, be seen as someone who can influence people. You cannot be very self-centered.
Shani.
Uh, Samir, I think it's also about like my previous theme of contributing, because we are thought leaders of a particular field, right? And we are not tied to an organization per se. So I think it's about, how well we are able to contribute in our own way for the overall industry as a whole,
So
so
giving it back, essentially, what you're
giving
saying.
it back, yes.
Awesome. Itti.
Complacency.
Complacency. Wonderful. Premil.
The lack of awareness of the negative impact that they could create with a very skewed opinion that they could say. It's definitely be in trouble.
Great. Abhishek.
I think just unstructured. I mean, I think where it starts to really go wrong is if you don't have a structure to the thought, to how you're channeling your energies and how you're making a name for yourself. Unstructured.
And Kapil, to finish with you.
So it's actually unclear. If a leader is unclear on why the person wants to be part of the thought leader circle, there are 10 different things, then that shouldn't be the case. So unclarity is one thing which I would say.
Great. Now, as we look forward, and I was ruminating with each one of you giving your perspective, this kind of a session or discussion has never happened because often the discussions are centered around industry, tech part, applications, business perspective. Because it's often that while we have spent decades in the industry, as Shani said, we never define ourselves. And when we start defining ourselves, we realize that, look, there is something called being differentiated. And it does take time, to the point what Itti said, that it's not an overnight kind of a magical pill you take and the results are seen in terms of you being a thought leader. But having said that, I think one of the realization or revelation today is that it's essential. When you're a thought leader, not only gives an edge to you, but the organization per se gains as well. Now, the flip side could be there could be a level of insecurity which creeps in within the organization amongst the leaders who are not the thought leaders. But having said that, that's the part and parcel of working in a corporate, which happens. But more importantly today, specifically in a world where we are, I would say, one amongst many, it's better to be rare. It's better to be kind of be seen in a way where you are very clear about your POV, as Abhishek rightly mentioned. And if the sum total of everything what you do is authentic, you will make yourself as a very genuine thought leader. With that, folks, thank you so much. A very, very, I would say, interesting, I would say, start of this Be Rare TLC Roundtable, because this is first of the other editions which are coming up. But thank you so much for your time, for sharing your perspective, and I look forward to your participation at 3i TLC. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.